Live. Here we go. 1 minute. There you go. Yeah, I know. Well, hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hope you're doing well in this week. And we're going to do another question and answer session like we always do. And we're going to start off with Manuel today. I don't know who that is.
Maybe Andre. This is that. So.
I don't think so.
Yeah, this is the one.
I don't think so, but okay. All right, we're going to start with Andre. Mm-hmm. She asked, since Daskalos always insisted to invite researchers of truth in feeling what is true on our own and to avoid just to believe in the teachings without experiencing them. Yes, that's true. I'm contemplating about your answer. This is a previous answer where I mentioned that Daskalos was against channeling, and she's asking about channeling here. So she's thinking about the answer that I mentioned on channeling, which, if I understood properly, you said it's not entirely safe as a way of communicating with the divine light. I really feel the Master's revelations, known as the Tibetan, are a gift to humanity. But I wonder how to combine what you said with the fact that the books by Anne Bailey, I think she means Alice Bailey, were channeled, and the same about Crayon via Lee Carroll, and about many others. I've been studying those beautiful teachings for a while. I really hoped I'm on the right path, and those books are safe. Thank you. The reason Daskalos was against channeling was because in what's typically called channeling, somebody puts themselves in a semi-trance. They sort of defocus the personality, and this information comes in. First of all, unless you're very high master, you have no idea where that information is coming from. And so it's an unknown source. And the energy has not been really verified. So just because it comes in and says things you like to hear or something doesn't mean it's of the light. In fact, there's so much trickery in spiritualism, just so much trickery by low-level spirits, and as well as some low-level human beings who's crossed over to the other side but like to influence the people back on Earth. So we have to be very, very careful about this. Now, what Daskalos did with Yohanan was not channeling. It's called attunement. And that's what we're really looking for, to really come into attunement with one thing and not just pick up information and interpret it ourselves and tell somebody that. That's more channeling. But even in channeling, there's a great deal of difference. There's some really, really bad channeling that's masquerading as high information. It's just not. But then there's some that are getting closer and closer. When I was in Cyprus one time, Daskalos announced that there was another fellow channeling Yohanan, or shouldn't say channeling, another fellow who was trying to channel Yohanan, and he was channeling Yohanan. And in channeling, there's a percentage. You mix your stuff with the stuff you're picking up, so it doesn't become a pure thing. It comes alloyed. Alloyed with your own past impressions coming from your subconsciousness and just the way you look at life. I mean, there's no way to get around that until you completely master your personality and are able to transcend it and go to the higher self. Then there's no danger. But as a personality, most people don't know where this is coming from. People that say, oh, it's coming from Christ or some alien or something like that. It's like you have to be so careful. So there was a fellow, like I said, in Greece who was passing Yohanan's information. And Daskalos was doing it. And he said, what's the difference between what I'm doing and what this fellow's doing? And Daskalos says, I completely, consciously, willingly allow Johanna to speak what he wants to speak through you. It's not like I'm channeling it. It's just like he knows who this is. He knows the voice of his mentor, right? So he becomes in tune with it. It's like if you take a piano and a harp and you put them both tuned to the same, properly tuned, and you strike a note on the piano, that very corresponding string on the harp will start to vibrate. That's attunement. There's two things, but they've gone into the same vibration. Now, this is different than a one-minute. One-minute is much more powerful. But attunement is what Daskalos used to bring in the information from Johanna. But the other fellow, he said, well, he was doing pretty good. He was bringing in like 60%. But still, it's alloyed. And unless you're very well versed in this kind of material, it's hard for a normal person to pick out what's false and what's not false, because they haven't studied it enough, or they haven't been versed in this territory enough to experience enough to know themselves whether this information rings true or not. But we should follow. You're right. You have a good point. We're not supposed to just blindly believe. Christ said, seek the truth and the truth will set you free. Well, he didn't say blindly believe other people's truth. So we have to research all this kind of thing so that we know the truth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about this other one by Lee Carroll, but the Tibetan one by Alice Bailey is coming from a group called the Lucius Trust. And I don't know if you've heard any stories about them lately since their association or their somehow involvement with the UN, but I'll leave that for future studies on your own, I guess. And one thing you can do when you hear channeled information, and we hear voices all the time, don't we? I mean, we're always hearing voices. We hear the voices of our mother that's been recorded in our subconsciousness. We hear the voice of our egotism. We hear the voice of our real self. We hear the voice of the guardian angel. We hear the voice of our partner. So survival in this world, we hear so many voices with the mass media now, of course. So survival in this world is become necessary to be very, very selective what voices you listen to, because the one you listen to is the one you're going to believe. That's just the way it is. So if you would manage to pick up some information coming in a channeled situation, first of all, these spirits, and mostly it's spirits, they're using the medium, who's the channeler. And what do they want? The low-level ones want attention. They want energy. Now, it's as if we're walking down here on Earth like this, but these spirits are up in this, not in the same dimension, so they can see further around. They can see what's coming. They know there's no thing hitting. In a psychical plane, there's nothing, no secrets. They know exactly what the person going to the medium wants. So when that person comes, their best strategy is to tell that medium what you want to hear, because then you feed energy into it. You feed money into the medium, right? And you feed energy into it. So they keep telling you what you want to hear. And in that sense, they deceive you, because this is not about what we want to hear. This is about what it really is.
Yes. As Daniel says, we have to be very careful from the other world. They know who is vulnerable to listen the false voice as the guidance, or through their channeling. So most likely they masquerade as an angel and appeared and give the guidance, who is vulnerable to receive it, and they try to let them open the door to the negative influences. So on this part, we have to be very careful to listen, or what we call channel something. And trustful channeling, what we call channeling, trustful thing is like Daskalos, the person who really has a tangible experience through the remark or through the word or whatever. The person who has a tangible experience and proved many times, tested and proved many times. Then the remark or the writings or whatever which is described or expressed is pretty much trustful. The scholars channel 100% Father Yohanan when he
It's
gives
attunement, it's not channel.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, not channel, attune 100% with Father Yohanan whenever he gave the lecture. This is what I studied.
The other way they trick you is, and it's amazing. It's just amazing that this is possible, but it does happen. These elementals, these spirits, they're in a higher dimension. They have more abilities than a normal personality. One thing they can do, see, their whole thing is to get you hooked into this medium, this channel, so you keep feeding energy into the spirit that's talking, as well as money into the medium. But they know the truth. They can see the truth. So one of the tricks is they just tell you the truth. They tell you exactly what's going to happen, exactly what's going to happen. You go, wow, this is a good thing. Well, that's its initial strategy to get you hooked into it. And I'm not saying that all information that coming from these are bad by any means, but even in the case of like this fellow who channeled 60% of Yohanan, or Alice Bailey. I mean, I've read Alice Bailey books when I was young, and the Tibetan, I know exactly who she's talking about. And, you know, it's still coming through a personality. That's the problem. And so what Dasclos would do is completely get out of his personality. He said sometimes he even just got out of his body and stood on the side of the room and watched his body speak Yohanan's words. So this is fully conscious. This isn't some trance thing where you got to do something weird, and then the voice, when they definitely get away from the ones that have us, I am talking now, they alter their voice to make it sound like when this thing talks, right? Those are fake. When you talk to one of these beings, higher beings, it's just like us talking. It's like that. It's not, you don't have to go into some trance and talk in some weird voice. It's not like that at all. The last thing I'll say about it is, those spirits that are giving information to the medium, that's not a free gift. They expect something. And they may go 10, 20, 30 years with a medium, and then they come back to take their payment. And their payment is the energy of the medium. A lot of mediums get sick, they get schizophrenic, they get really unbalanced, because this process tends to unbalance a person because it's not authentic. It's not coming from yourself. Our work here, Researchers of Truth, is to find the truth. Where? In us. Everything is in us. I know we run around for gurus and books and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's in us. And the only thing the books and the gurus do is they help you realize that it's in you. They help you access this in you. And that's the best of all. Okay. What's the next one?
Next is
Willie?
and you can
Willie.
go with that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Hi, Willie. He says, my dilemma is about meditation, mantra, silence, mindfulness, guided meditation, etc., etc. So many options. Osho once said, meditation is just doing nothing, meaning just being there. And to be honest, I don't think he was wrong. Would love your input. Well, Willie's right. There's so many kinds of meditation. Some of them are absolutely dangerous, especially those big, strong pranayama, the breath exercises from India. You really should avoid those because they're not really the best. What's been given here in terms of the breathing that Aki's been giving, and obviously Dasclos' breathing techniques, are safe and they're proven. They've been safe and proven for thousands of years, actually. So be careful about the foreign systems. But, you know, what is meditation? Mantra meditation, silent meditation. Well, mantra meditation, we again advise against it because, again, mantra puts you in a trance, and we're trying to go to an alert wakefulness. We're trying to raise our consciousness, not go into some trance state. And the mantra tends to do that. And when you're in a trance state like that, things from your subconsciousness can come up and they can affect you. If they're good, then maybe they affect you good. But if they're not good, or some bad memories or some unresolved issues back there, and those come up, they can disturb you and make you unbalanced. So we just don't want to mess with that, because that's what happens. You go to the subconscious, and then you have no control over what's coming from your subconscious mind. Whereas in our meditations, which one of them is particularly, especially if you want to learn how to do out-of-body work, is you have to stop your thoughts. You have to, and by stopping your thoughts, I don't mean you're really mastering your mind. You're mastering that doorway, that portal between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. So it's just learning how to shut that door when you want to be in peace, when you want to meditate in peace or be in silence. Silence. Oh, well, there's lots of good practices out there, advice about, oh, go and be silent for a week. Don't, and that was popular when we were on Cyprus. And one time, a Catholic priest came to ask. I said, "Oh, sir, I like your teaching. I agree with it, and I spend a week every once in a while in silence." Desk goes, "Do you really?" He says, "Yes, I do." "You don't talk to anybody?" "No, I don't talk to anybody." "Does anybody talk to you?" "No, I don't let anybody talk to me." "Can you stop your thoughts?" "Well, no. How can I do that?" He says, "Well, if you can't stop your thoughts, it's not really." So this is why there's a practice of you should take a minute or two every day and just see if you can sit there without letting thoughts drag you around here and there. And what else? Mindfulness. Yeah, mindfulness is just a nice word for alertness. It's what we're looking for, to be very, very mindful. Guided meditations are very good. Daskalos advised them.
Yes.
The only trouble with guided meditations is that after you do them for a while, then if you listen to them, that person talking is a little too slow. Maybe in the beginning it seems a little too fast, but once you get used to the exercise, the listening to somebody else can be a little too slow. So it's advisable that if you get into a meditation, oh, I really like this guided meditation, that you reach a point where you memorize the whole thing. You can just do it on your own, and that way you do it in your own pace. You're not waiting or trying to catch up or anything. So the other thing about Oso here is just being there. I agree. It is just being there. There are kinds of meditations where, a lot of our meditations are visualizations, because they're training us to use the aesthetic ether, the kinetic ether, and the imprinting ether. This is something we must master as a researcher of truth. And then there's some where you just completely stop the mind. You come out of your material body. You come out of the human form. You go into the archangelic form. And at the very innermost circle, students, Daskalos would have he would have them abandon all form. Now, of course, they were afraid to do that, and very few could do it. But they did do it. They did eventually do it. And so there's all kinds. So in the one where you come out of all your, even your human form, you're just there. It's a super conscious state of one-pointed awareness. Those kind. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, so?
Okay. Yes, the mantra teaching says about mantra meditation. Teaching says, as Daniel said, mantra brings us on the kind of surface in between of the threshold of our subconsciousness and the consciousness. We should not be in that kind of condition long time, because there is a possibility to slip off our subconsciousness. So we don't recommend it, the mantra meditation. And the silence, as Daniel said, silence is, we have to silence our emotion and thought. I have to silence our personality. It doesn't mean we don't talk with other people, keep silence. Of course, it's the first step, but we have to silence our thought. Then what's going to happen? Once we silence our emotion and thought completely, then observation start. This is the condition which we need in our meditation. So in our meditation, as the first step, we silence our emotion and thought. What Daskaru says, relax completely. Let go all emotions and thoughts, and release all physical tensions. Then we can relax all three bodies, which means observation immediately start. And we transfer into the meditative state. Okay. Then in our teaching system, using, as Daniel said, a kinetic, aesthetic, and imprinting ether, and using those functions of ether, we use the skill of the visualization and try to understand something which we would like to know, focusing on something which we would like to know by creating the movement using the kinetic, aesthetic, imprinting ether. Then by concentration, observation, visualization, we will be able to know by creating the movement. This movement is called meditation in our teaching system. And once we focus on, concentrate on what we want to know, then we will know and understand what we would like to know by gathering, concentrating the light, mind light. So we exercise step by step by doing these processes. Then eventually we will know what we want to know by attunement, and at the end, attunement. Then once it happened, it means self-realization. And the ultimate meditation of us is meditating on ourselves. On ourselves. So the reason why we are seeking the truth, researching the truth, is to know thyself. So final goal of us is to meditate on ourselves, which we call introspection. Like this way, we will know thyself through meditation. So the meaning of the meditation, definition of the meditation is a little bit different with the definition of the meditation in general, but we have a silencing our emotion and the thought. We include all the process, and based on that, we create some image and visualization and reach to the self-realization at the end. The scholars advise the guided meditation because it brings us a kind of relaxed and releasing all three bodies tension. So he says it's good to do the guided meditation. Did I say everything?
Are you done?
Yes, I get it.
Okay.
I guess so. Mm-hmm.
This question is from Michael. I was wondering what Daskalu's teaching was on why Jesus had to die on the cross, or if there were multiple reasons. The common saying is he died for our sins never satisfied me. Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons about that. I don't even know how to touch that one. It's so big, but we'll just talk about some general things. What's a cross? He died on a cross. What's a cross? Cross represents the four elements. And each of the points of the cross, the earth one is the long one down here, and fire and water left and right, and air, and ether at the center. So he's nailed to the cross. He's nailed. He's crucified on the four elements, the material world, psychonoetical are these two. Earth element here, noetic. And when he died, what did he do? He dropped his head to the center, to the etheric. The one that represents the point in the center represents the etheric, and out of which all these other ones come. And there's etheric is what's made. It's the mold in which earth, air, fire, and water are made, the etheric counterpart of. So it's kind of symbolic. He's crucified on the four elements, the same four elements we're crucified on. We're crucified all the time, slowly, until we reach the big crucifixion. And then that becomes the resurrection, where the little self, the egotism, is crucified. And the inner self comes forward and manifests. And you can't expect that to happen. We're all looking for that, enlightenment, self-realization. But don't ever expect that to happen until you crucify your own egoism. It's just not possible. So that's one of the great symbolic meanings on this, that the little self has to be crucified for the big self. Now, of course, Christ was the perfect man. He was sinless. That's why it's so profound for him to be killed in this horrible, horrible manner. And they say for our sins. Well, what's that mean? Well, the truth of it is Christ carries 90% of the karma, call it sin if you want, on his shoulders of everybody. But when he died for his sins, it doesn't mean like, oh, he took all my karma. I just can say I believe in Christ and I'm going to be fine. It's not like that at all. Christ can only take, it's a law, can only take 90% of it. Why not 100%? Because if he took 100%, we wouldn't learn our lessons. We would just endlessly keep making the same mistakes, being forgiven 100%, and keep making the same mistakes. So that last 10% of the karma we have to take on, unless we are fortunate enough to come across a sincere healer, a real healer. And these guys, two things are happening. If this guy is self-realized healer, he will take 10% of your 10% of the karma. That's what a healer does. That's how the healing happens. But he can't take it until the law of cause and effect has been played out enough by you, where you've got enough that you can have that last 10% taken off, and then there's a healing. But so that means a healer, he takes every 10% of everybody's karma that comes to him? Yes. But Christ immediately takes 90% of that karma. So we end up with the self-realized healer ends up with just a little karma, and they know how to burn it with like the flame meditation where we burn our karmic debts. Yeah, you can't just say, oh, he died on the cross for sins, I don't have any sins. It doesn't work that way at all. We have to overcome our own weaknesses and sins and mistakes ourselves, 10% of it at least. So what else can we say about the cross? And yeah, he had to die on the cross. It had to happen this way. And there's a great teaching in spirituality that something has to die before it can release its power, before it can release its teaching. So the symbol of him dying on the cross, then the teachings of Christianity were released. It's the same thing and you'll read this in the Bible, with a grain of corn. It says if the grain of corn remains by itself, it won't produce anything. It has to die. It has to go into the earth and die and become the plant that comes up to release its power, to release its purpose. And so that's another thing about the cross. And don't think this is only happening on Earth. This is happening on every single planet in the entire universe where human life has reached this stage where they can start to receive these higher teachings. And what are the higher teachings? Obviously, love. He only taught two things: love God and love your fellow human beings. So when mankind gets to a point to start to be able to comprehend that message, when he came, the idea of loving your neighbor was like, it was just of loving others as yourself, because in truth, they are yourself. So there was a lot to that. You have something?
Mm-hmm. Cross symbolizes, as Daniel says, 4 elements and also the words, all words. And the center is center point, heart center, which Christ looked down at the end, is symbolized also ether and also logos. So it symbolizes the center point, symbolizes logos. So teaching says microcosmically the cross symbolizes the crucifixion of the Christ, but the the macrocosmically crucifixion, it says this eternal crucifixion of the Logos to manifest the creation of our world. So it comes from this point and all the world and go back to this point. This is the meaning of the cross, and he crucified on that.
Bertold has a question here. I was reading in Daskalos' books about God's expression of the Holy Spirit in the Christ Logos. Could you please tell us more about how they are expressed and create our reality? Well, this part of the question, for a human being, no matter how advanced they are, they can only understand God as really in two expressions, the logoic and the Holy Spiritual. The logoic, what's the word logos mean? Well, it's a Greek word, and they most often translate it as word. So they say Christ is the word of God because Christ is the logos, right? But it really, that's not the right definition for this use of it. It means manifestation. So when you hear Christ is the only begotten Son of God, this means it's the only manifestation. It's the Son of God. So it's a manifestation of God as the Son. It's still God, but it's manifested as the Son. The Holy Spirit is still God, but it's manifested Holy Spiritually. So, what's that mean? What's the logos, really? What is the logos? The logos is selfhood. Absolute total selfhood, logos. Or we are like individual cells in that logos. Individual logoic cells. That's our I-ness. We're individual cells in this big logos. And it's what's giving us our self-awareness. Okay, so logos is self-awareness. The Holy Spiritual side, what's that? Well, that's our self-consciousness. How is that our self-consciousness? Well, is the Holy Spirit altogether, it's the absolute total consciousness, of which our consciousness, again, is a cell in this absolute consciousness, Holy Spiritual consciousness. And so what's the difference between our self-awareness and self-consciousness? That's really a good question. I seldom ever hear that. I don't ever hear that answered in spiritual systems very often. Daskalos, of course, did, but I've never found others that gave very deep answers to those questions because they're such deep issues. So again, all the human being can understand is these two things. So we have a self. We are a self. We are a self in the logos. We're a little cell of selfhood in the logos. And that selfhood extends from our eternal spirit being self, spirit soul self, permanent personality or inner self, and then all the way down to the present day personality. So all that's a selfhood. All that's logoic. That's us. Now, what are we doing? Well, the first thing that happens when the manifestation of the Logos and the Holy Spirit comes is the mind gets emanated from the beings, from God as a Trinity, as well as from all the beings in that Trinity. And the mind is used to make by the archangels to make the worlds of existence. The mind is used by us to make our little worlds. We think about this, we do this, we build our little worlds by using the same mind substance. The difference is the archangels emanate the substance themselves, so they are not borrowing the substance, they are just using their own substance. But as a personality, and as we as a spirit do the same thing, but as a personality, we have to borrow that mind. It's not emanating from our personality. So we have to borrow the mind, and then we use it. Use it how? Well, first step, the mind is formless supersubstance. It's a substance. It's this all-pervading substance that's used for the creation of everything. But it doesn't create by itself. There has to be a self using it. Your brain just doesn't create thoughts by itself. You as a self are using your mind with this formless supersubstance that you have no idea about and formulating thoughts and feelings into specific little entities, little elementals. So how you as a self use the mind is your self-consciousness. That's it. It can be very low, it can be very high. But it's you, how you're using that mind in your life determines your self-consciousness. Now, the self-awareness is just waking up and realizing I am a self that has a body and has a mind, and you're using it to create my world for whatever purpose you think you're doing it. So important to be able to come up to a direct experience of your own self. And that's what we're looking for, self-realization. We're not trying to create the self. The self is already there. We're just trying to realize it. And so that's how we create our reality. That's how we create reality. The reality, that's how God creates the reality. There's a self, the archangelic beings, and they use the consciousness, they use the mind to create these different worlds of existence. And in doing so, they create 7 different layers of consciousness. The first one, obviously, is the sensitivity that the mineral kingdom has, the sensibility the plant kingdom has, the instincts the animals have, the subconsciousness that humans have, the consciousness, awakening consciousness humans have, and the superconscious humans have, and eventually the self-superconsciousness. Now, the human being has all of these. Every level above the lower level of consciousness has that thing. For example, the animals have instinct, but they also have sensibility. They can sense what's warm and cold, and they also have sensitivity. They everything, every level of consciousness has the level below it. Man comes in, doesn't come in as a rock trying to develop it all, because it already has sensitivity, sensibility, instinct in us. Subconsciousness, we move from the instinctual level of consciousness to subconsciousness and eventually to waking consciousness through all those levels, superconsciousness, and eventually self-superconsciousness. So all that's creating the realities. Now, I want to say one other thing. He has another question here. What's the meaning of EL at the name of the ends of all the archangels? EL just means God. And so if you talk to an archangel, as Daskos often declared he did, and he asked him, who are you? They say, God, because they're in oneness with God. They don't think of themselves as not God. So each archangel gets that L at the last of his name. And what can we say else about it? Yeah. Now, in a similar way, we won't go too deep into this, but in a similar way, the demons get their own names, and they don't have L at the end because they're not of God. They have different endings of their names. And so, for example, Gabriel, it means the will pleasure of expression of God, really. Mahael means the great God. Raphael is about Ra was this is coming back from the Egyptian times. Ra was the sun god. So Raphael is the sun vibration god. So the energy of Raphael is like the energy you get from the sun. It's very strong. It's full of etheric vitality.
Yes. L and R, EL and R. Those are the holy sound, which means, as Daniel says, God. And we call God Allah. Al-Ha. Al means Al, A-L, E-L means God. Ha means being. So God, being. And each word has these kind of holy sound has the strong power in it. So we should not pronounce the word of evil ones, even though we know the name of it, because it creates the power of it. And Al, again, Al means God. El means God. And Ha means being. Allah means God being. And when it gets plural, means gets plural, plurality, it's called Elohim. Elohim, maybe most of people can ever heard it before. Elohim means a plural of the and it means archangelic orders.
Yeah, but even with that, we don't want to think of God as more than one thing. God is one thing, but in its plurality, in its multiplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's said that we are created in the image of God in his likeness. Well, how is that? Well, God manifests in this first manifestation as absolute infinite beingness, as Daskalos and Origen called it. And they say that because it's composed by an infinite number of eternal spirit beings. So it's a beingness. It's not just one thing. It doesn't mean God is multiplying. It just means being in great numbers. Now, okay, we're made in his image and likeness. How does that work? Well, we have our own multiplicity. And our multiplicity is all the elementals that compose our personality. Mm. So we, right here and now, are full of a multiplicity. Things we like, we don't like, want, we don't want. All these things that we have, all these ideas, all these notions, all these paradigms we have makes up our multiplicity. Okay. This one's from Vicky. I'm always looking forward to these sessions. My question is on a similar topic to Bertolt. It's two questions. Daskalos talked about Mother Mary, who was born by Immaculate Conception, and the possibility of her being a pan-universal femininity, the Holy Spirit manifested. However, Daskalos said he hadn't finished contemplating on this lecture where the topic was discussed. Do either of you know if Daskalos came to the conclusion about this? Was Holy Mary, Mother Mary, the Holy Spirit manifested, or was she the archangel from the realm of principalities? I also want to thank you for your time. Yeah, he did work on that more. There was his ultimate statement on it is that I know is that yes, the Holy Spirit is the pan-universal feminine. Okay. Every single woman, from the worst to the best, is the divine feminine in each of these people. But who expresses it the best? Well, obviously, Mother Mary expressed it the best. She was the purest, the most high example of Mother Mary. But everyone's Mother Mary. Aki's Mother Mary, your Mother Mary, Vicky's Mother Mary. But they're all expressing it to a different degree. Same thing with the Logos. It's the pan-universal masculinity. And all men reflect that. All men are an expression of that to various degrees, depending on their level of evolution. So it's something like that. But she also was an archangel too. And Christ had 3 archangel companions that always traveling with him through this passion play, which is acted out on every planet, as I said, once it gets to a certain level of evolution. And they come with him. Who are they? John the Baptist, John the Evangelist, and Mother Mary. All 3 of them were born immaculate too, because they have a high mission. They're not just some ordinary soul that's managed to raise their consciousness high enough to be able to be there with Christ at that time. These come with him every time, and they come with him to every planet. And it's the same story. The details are a little different, but it's the same story. The most innocent has to be crucified by the most vicious. It's the same story. And let's see. Yeah, that's good. I think you have something to say.
Okay. Yes. Mother Mary is the feminine expression of the absolute beingness, God. Like Jesus Christ is the masculine expression of the absolute being. So, Jesus Christ and also Mother Mary, they lived as a human being about 2,000 years ago, but they are not just historical people. They are symbolic. They are symbolizing masculine part of the absolute beingness, and the female, feminine expression of the absolute beingness. And Mother Mary is it's called the widest of heaven. So she's also called the creation of the all universes, mother of all creations. So all the creation is come through her. So in that sense, she's a big mother of the creation, as the one aspect of the absolute, one nature of the absolute beingness. And as the archangelic teaching says, that she belongs pan-universal authorities class, highest class of the archangelic order.
Hugo is asking, I recently saw a documentary about the Bermuda Triangle. Apparently, there's a scientific explanation for this. I'm curious on the, not sure what to call it, mystical level. Is there other significance to the triangle? I think everybody knows the Bermuda Triangle is this little triangular area off the coast of Bermuda and the Atlantic Ocean where boats and planes go missing. It has been presented by many that this is a portal, some portal that they can pop into another dimension. I don't really believe that, because every molecule is a portal. Every point is a portal. You don't have to have a portal to go to someplace to cross the other dimension. The other dimension is completely interpenetrating and surrounding this dimension. So it doesn't matter where you go. Even when you leave the body in our system, we're not advised to leave from the solar plexus, obviously, but the heart, the head, top of the head, forehead, got the third eye. Daskalos, where did Daskalos leave? Where did he like to leave his body from? Every pore, he said. So it's not a matter of a locality. The portals are everywhere. It's just a matter of knowing how to overcome the etheric vitality to pass through into the next dimension. So I know a lot of people believe in the Bermuda Triangle, but I have just not found any evidence. And the idea of it's some special portal because of what? The interesting point, I think, it's right there where Atlantis used to be, and they found some really amazing stuff deep in the water by Cuba, some pyramids and really amazing stuff. And of course, the Bimini Wall. Casey said Atlantis would be discovered in, I don't know, 61 or 67 or something, and that's the year they found the Bimini Wall, where there's these giant blocks of stone that looks like a wall or maybe a roadway or something that is underneath the shallow waters. They discovered it exactly the date Casey said they would. Casey is the American prophet. So actually, I think that's a more interesting question, is like, was there Atlantis? In fact, somebody asked on our Facebook page, and I haven't answered it yet, did Daskalos talk about Atlantis? Yes, he did. He didn't like to get he didn't like to get too much into it, because students get really off into that and into, aliens and UFOs and the past civilization. He didn't want you to really go into that, because what's most important for us right now is to master our thoughts and emotions, to purify our personality, raise it up so it can be assimilated with the inner self. That's what we really want. It's okay to know about Atlantis, but it doesn't help us do that so much, other than the fact that there were pre-existing civilizations that have gone along and taken us to different stages. Lemuria, Atlantis, the great Egyptian civilization. And I'm going to put some chapters in the book that's about to be released this year called Diving with the Whale, where we'll talk about the purpose of Lemuria, Atlantis, what they brought, what they were trying to do, what happened to them. And Daskalos did talk about that. And so I'm going to save it for the book for most of that stuff. But definitely he confirmed there was an Atlantis. And as Plato, I mean, he's the guy that has really brought the information of Atlantis to us. And he got that from his uncle, who was a statesman and considered one of the wisest of the 7 sages of ancient Greece, who went to Egypt and got all this information, because it's all there recorded at the Edfu Temple. They record about this island that sank in their prehistory, and the survivors came to Egypt to start to rebuild their civilization. And they brought with them the doctor, the farmer, the builder, the poet, the physician. They brought all those kind of people with them so they could try to restart their civilization. And he did it in the Yucatan and other places as well. So yeah, he did confirm these pre-existing civilizations, and they were stages. We had stuff to learn. Stuff happened in those stages. And when I say we, I mean humanity. And so, yeah, I haven't seen evidence that convinced me that the Bermuda Triangle was some special portal where planes were disappearing. You have anything?
Yes, just a little bit. As we have centers, what we call chakras in our bodies in general. Likewise, on our planet, physically, we have a certain places like energetic places, just like our centers, chakras. But we are not sure Bermuda Triangle is one of them or not. And any place, as he said, any place can be the portal.
I think there are power points on Earth, but I don't know if it's sucking planes into another dimension.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe, Daniel, did you read Gustavo?
I'm getting to them. So I'm just going to read this next one. We talk about the help. This comes from Jeff. We receive while in a material body from various beings like our guardian angels and others. But I'm wondering, if we only send a ray of ourselves into the material body, what's the remaining part of us doing? Are we totally involved in caring for that part of us that is incarnated? Or maybe we have other obligations. Or maybe just watching and praying we don't create too much negative karma. Also, any thoughts about an in-person seminar this year? Yeah, so what Jeff's asking is we begin as in one of the holy monads in absolute beingness, which contains thousands of eternal spirit beings. And when it's time, and this has to do with their will as well as God's will, for them to incarnate, they project a tiny ray of themselves out from their state, and it is a state, it's a noetic state, out down through the divine plan, which is the eternal archetypal ideas, passing through the human idea to become humanized, to form the soul. And the soul, in turn, projects down into the worlds. And it's still in beingness. It's still in oneness with God, but in attunement. But now it projects down to a personality, down into the worlds of existence, and dresses them with a mental body, an emotional body, and a physical body. We hit the ground, and then we start doing whatever we do. And that either makes a better personality, and makes a personality more aligned with the inner self, and they receive much benefit, or it tries. Maybe that personality wants to run away from that inner self and be as wild and bad as it can, be very prodigal. So, but whether it's a saint or a sinner, the personality is a saint or a sinner, the vast majority of that selfhood is still up in the oneness with God. It's still in absolute oneness with God, but it doesn't realize its individuality yet. That's why the whole journey of incarnation is about, because the personality gets self-realized, soul gets self-realized, and it comes back and it brings that self-realization back to the spirit. Now the spirit says, oh, I'm God, but I'm also an individual. I'm self-realized. I realize my unique selfhood. At that level, you merge back into God, but you can come back anytime you want because you haven't lost your individuality. So what it's doing is it's nobody really knows much. Obviously, it's at one with God, so it's not suffering at all, obviously. I do know that it's that ray that's projected ends up acting like a mother to us as a present-day personality, trying to help us. You know, it's loving us. It's not smacking us around. It's loving us, trying to guide, even in our mistakes. Oh, no, over here, adjust a little bit. So it's constantly doing that work, but that still is a tiny, tiny part of its great selfhood. Now, it sort of ties in with these other questions. One thing it's doing is participating in the divine contemplation, because there's an endless, eternal contemplation by God and all the beingness about reality at whatever level. So it's through this divine contemplation that the divine plan comes about, and that's how this all manifests down here. So, yeah, I don't think we know much about it, because no one, even Dascalos, has not crossed there and had theosis yet. No one crosses to have theosis till everybody on the planet is self-realized. And then that self-realized planet has work to do in the universes. What are the ETs doing? They're doing this work in the universe. They're self-realized. So after that, then you go and you take soul self-realization, and then then now you're out of time altogether. So then immediately, seconds, not long, I would say, before you have your spirit self-realization. That's theosis in our system. Something.
Yeah. Yes, at least a permanent personality is taking care of us, our personality, just like a mother, as if a mother is taking care of a child. She is not the kind of very strict judging anything. She's just she's always observing and giving the wisest intuition to learn for us our personality improve better and better, express our personality better and better. So in that way we've been taking care of it. And when we descend from the highest as a ray of the being, the archangels and guardian angels and the archangels of element comes with us. They are also taking care of us.
Good. This is from Chris. With regards to romantic partnerships, the Bible says we should not be unequally yoked. I'm not sure how literal to take this. What's your advice on a relationship where one party is highly spiritual and the other is not at all? And then he goes on to something else I can talk about. But this part, unequally yoked, that means they're not very well balanced for whatever reason. It could be material reasons, spiritual and material, whatever reasons, they're not very well balanced. Well, it'd be a lot easier if couples were equally balanced. Yeah, that would be easier. But even still, in an unequal yoked, I guess yoked just means tied together or harnessed together, there are great, great, valuable lessons brought to us by those who don't agree with us. Well, they just push people away that don't agree with them, and they pull the people to them that agree with them. But as a researcher of truth, we should listen to everybody. We should, because it gives us a fuller understanding. So a lot of times with relationships where they are unbalanced, they each have something very, very important to give to each other, to bring to each other. There's a lesson there, a very, very valuable lesson. And guess what? The lesson is always the same lesson: to learn to love. To learn to love unselfishly. So, yeah, it's a much more difficult situation when people aren't balanced, but there's something there for them. Perhaps the spiritual one is there to show them by their own example, not by their words, but by their own example, the way they live their lives, what spirituality really is giving people, why it's good. So maybe the unspiritual person looks at the spiritual part and goes, wow, they seem to be growing. They seem to be happier. They're not bothered by things like they used to be. Maybe there's something there. So it sort of leads them into that, if the person wants to. Now, of course, we're not allowed to lead other people into spirituality just because we want to. That's not the way. If they ask and they show an interest, definitely lead them. But it's not right. Dascalos always gave this analogy. He said, it's like, first of all, people aren't at the same level of evolution, spiritual evolution. And why? Because they don't want to be. But as one starts to grow and the other one maybe doesn't, there's still such precious lessons in there for everybody. And you might think of it as, it's God brought those two together to show them, to help them get their lessons and move forward. And definitely in difficult relationships, you will have the greatest growth you will have if you process it properly. Most people process it, they're wrong, I'm right, you come over here and do what I want, then we'll be in harmony. But that's not the way it should be, obviously. So try to find it in one of those unequal relationships. Try to find what is working, what is connecting. Maybe you like life together, you like your children or whatever. Build on that. And then try to think about the parts that aren't so in harmony as great opportunities for your advancement. Do you have something?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Maybe we might need to introspect on ourselves to see someone or partner is spiritually not developed enough. It means kind of judgment. We all of us on the stairs of the development of our self-consciousness to reach the self-realization. So in a relationship, even we feel like spiritually she or he is not really developed, but in other part, she or he might help our development. And also if we have something to share spiritually more than she or he has, then by giving we can develop more. By giving, the more we give, the more we develop, and that way we can grow each other. The receiver, the partner will receive, and we can also have the benefit by giving love or whatever benefit which we can share. So in that sense, we can't judge, which partner, which one is more developed or not developed. And yes.
And that switches a lot. It could be next lifetime that the other person might seem more developed than you are that next lifetime because they're working on certain things. They have certain life lessons. So even when you see someone struggling with a life lesson very hard, don't think that is a measure of their evolution. It could be they're just working on one really hard thing they've had trouble getting, but they're very advanced in other ways. And next lifetime they'll express it. This one is from Amy. It says, I've seen in the Researchers of Truth book over the years a way to minimize, disenergize elementals that contribute to addictions, obsessions, but I cannot find them at the moment. Will you please review how to do this? Well, yeah, this is like the heart of the work for us, because look around you. Everything you see out your window or inside your house is created by an elemental. The archangels create elementals, become the living forms of life all around us. Humanity creates our elementals and makes things, but they can't reproduce themselves because we don't have access to the creative ether right now. But the archangels do. And so their creations, their elementals are living creations of all the forms of life around us. Man, not so much. But the problem is we start to build negative ones. We're free. We got free will. We can use the mind to create negative things or positive things. And we're subconscious right now, so we're creating a lot of negative things. So just imagine there's only going to be two ways to deal with these elementals, especially the one you want to deal with the ones that are troubling you, right? Of course. So first one is not a good one. So don't you can try it, and it does work, but it's the hard way to go. And that is you have to create other elementals twice as powerful as the ones you've created. Now imagine somebody that smokes 20 cigarettes a day, every day, 20, 30 years, how many times has he strengthened that elemental? So it's not super easy just to create another elemental that's got twice that kind of energy. Some people can do it. There are some people that can do it. Most can't. They most fail. This is why they fail. They struggle when they may be successful for a while and then it comes back because they haven't really got to the cause. So in our system, we have 3 basic steps. And the first one is the hardest. It's the hardest. It's going to take you the longest time. But after you get it, the rest aren't that hard. And the first step, of course, is coming to a clear, unconflicted decision to get rid of the elemental that's bothering you, the behavior that's bothering you, the attitude that's bothering you. That is really hard because a lot of times you'll do it for a while and then you'll go back and do the other thing. Let's say it's smoking, whatever. You stop smoking for a few minutes and then you go back and do it because you haven't really got the unconflicted. You're doing it because you know you should do it, but you don't really want to do it, maybe. So there's a lot of time in there where you're flipping back and forth between both poles like a ping pong ball, and you don't fully overcome it. You can overcome it for a while, but then it comes back in. It just takes a couple times of smoking. You've got the habit again. So once you come to the decision that you want to get rid of it completely, and there's no conflict, and you're totally there, right? Then it's not so hard because then the next step is you just are not allowed to think about it. Not allowed to think about it, not allowed to desire it, not allowed to feel it. Just take your mind completely off of it. Put it on something that's life affirming, something that's going to help you rather than hinder you in life. That's the second step. And the third step, and this is where most people fail, is they don't replace that. They've had this habit pattern of doing the same thing every day. And so they say, okay, I've stopped, I'm taking my mind off of it, but it's empty. So it's sort of like a groove in the record or a hole. You can go back into it because there's a hole there. There's a negative space there to pull you back into that behavior. So we need to fill that space so it can't come back in. A lot of people, I don't know if they still do it, they were trying to give up smoking, they would start sucking lollipops because it's a tactile thing they're doing. So, and it's a mouth thing. So that this helped people forget about smoking. It really worked. It's simple. But in other situations, we just have to create the thing we want and start energizing that. And that fills the hole of the negative one we're replacing it with. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I have a little bit more to say. Most of them, Daniel said, but in teaching, it says this way, most of people want to change, but actually they say they want to change, they want to fix, but most of them actually don't want to change. So we have to, when we really want to improve some condition, like he or she asked, the addictive things, then we have to make a clear decision. And we have to, first step is have to have a clear decision. And ask ourselves if we really want to change or not. Then once we make a decision, then try to neglect it. Once it comes, try to neglect it. And instead of that, replace something. We have to do it consciously at the beginning. Just like when we train how to ride a bicycle, first, as the first step, we have to do it very consciously, step by step. But once we get used to doing that, we can do it more and more smoother way. So first step, decision, clear decision. The second step is neglect and not put the, we don't put the focus on the bad habit or something, whatever comes. And the third step, we replace the bad one into good one, ideal one, which you want to manifest. And we do it consciously at the beginning, very carefully and slowly, but it will be much, much easier to do it once we get used to it. This is the steps.
I just,
Because
yeah, I know.
and
answered
someone asked about the seminar.
Oh, the seminar, yeah.
This year.
Yeah, we hope to do a seminar. We hope to add to the, be able to do a physical seminar again this year. We're waiting to see. Here in the U.S., 17 states have dropped the mask mandate and all the business closing, and it's likely others will follow. So I hope Indiana is one. And
we miss
can
everyone.
See you. We miss you. Yeah, it's true. We miss you. Yeah. So also, I just want to add to something we were just talking about the, you say, take your mind off, put it on something else. What's happening is when we have a troubling, torturing elemental, somebody says something hurts our feeling, what do? We focus on it. What are we doing when we focus on it? We're feeding the energy of our attention into it. So really, this is all about what you're focusing on. And you have to be, get the decision to say, I don't want to focus on that. I want to stop focusing on what bothers me and start focusing on what's helping me. Because all you're going to do is take the energy out, like unplugging the negative one and putting the energy cord into the positive one. And now you're building that. And now you're going to have better consequences. So it's about what you're focusing on. So we have to stop focusing on the negative and start energizing the positive, and don't mess with anything in between.
And we human beings have the power to do it. We have the ability to change our attention from the negative things to the positive things. Use your willpower. And
the last question is from Brother Gustavo in Brazil. And thank you for the Brazilian coffee. I really like it. I really like it. Sure.
Thank you.
After I started attending Daniel's seminars, I see faces of people before falling asleep. Sounds like a negative consequence of the seminar. Sometimes these are quick snapshots to wake me up, and I have trouble sleeping. Comments, advice? Yeah, I think it's a good sign, actually, because in the seminars, what are we doing? We're training. We're talking about how it all works, and that helps. But we're also training to develop our use of the kinetic, aesthetic, and imprinted ethers. And it's the imprinted ether that's bringing these faces to you. So in some ways, I do see it as it's just activating your etheric vitality, and it's energizing the imprinted ether, and you're seeing more clearly. And that's something you definitely will do after working with these practices. You'll be able to close your eyes and see in great detail, and you will see images. Now, if you don't say if they're good, it doesn't mean they're all going to be all angels, but they are coming from your subconsciousness, but the development of the imprinted ether makes you more aware of it. It's always there, but you weren't using the imprinted ether. So now you're starting to see them, and you do it right before you go to sleep, because right at that moment, there's this little precious moment where the doors to the subconsciousness open. I say precious is if you use it properly. If it's not precious, it can torture you. But right there as you go to sleep, that's the thing when it starts to become more porous and open. And this is exactly why we advise doing introspection at the end of the day when that doorway opens, because now in introspection, we're seeing our mistakes and we're saying, no, I don't want to yell at people if they provoke me. I want to be calm. I want to smile. I don't want them to affect me. So now you're programming your subconscious mind, which is your greatest ally in some of these works, during that moment when the door is open. So it's absorbed by the subconscious more. So in your case, it's just you're a much more you're picking up on it more visually than feeling the thing. Some people may, I feel all these feelings, all these right before they go to sleep. Yeah, and that's when your negative elementals come. They come at you right before you fall asleep and right before you wake up in the morning, because you're more vulnerable. You're sleepy, you're passive, and so they can affect you more. So you'll notice that some of the scariest things about your life will try to bother you the first thing in the morning as you're getting up, or the last thing at night. That's why we have these practices to program our subconsciousness in a way that helps us. So, Gustavo, you don't say if they're pleasing or unpleasing. I know you used to have very pleasing ones. But yeah, just the thing is, don't follow, don't run off and follow it, and chase it down. Just observe it, see what you notice from it. Now I'm missing one from.
Can I say something on this?
Manuel, yeah. Okay.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Gustavo, when experience the seminar, once we uplift our self-consciousness, naturally our five senses, real five senses, come, and we start to experience real five senses slowly. Then there's no wonder you start to see the faces of people. I presume probably you when we receive someone's elemental, most of the time it shows up like people's face. So you might have caught people's elementals, start to perceive the people's elemental as the face. It might be, but if those are bothering you, please create a light shield. And if it's before you sleep, then also create a 5-pointed star around you. Then you'll be definitely fine. If they bother you, but if they are enjoyable things, just observe.
Okay, I found another question from Manuel. He says he's been doing the 3 sun practices for several months daily. I've noticed that all the elemental structures I had been building are changing. Sometimes they change form with the new geometric patterns. Others just show themselves more crystallized, but the feeling is soft, even when they look like crystal structures. My etheric hands and my etheric body is changing. I also had experiences where when I relaxed, I laid down with spontaneous out-of-body feelings, sometimes soft, sometimes more violent in the landing. Also, the 3 suns' energy qualities change. Tuning into the centers during the meditation, I can feel more fluidity, expansion, and the feelings that sometimes expand all over the room. But the most important thing is that it's energizing the 3 shuns and the light shield. I think there was more, but I don't know what happened to it. It didn't get printed out. But okay. So okay. It might be tempting when you see visions like this, that they're not the 3 suns. You're doing the 3 suns and you're seeing other things. It's changing the vibration of the 3 suns exercise, but you're seeing crystalline structures and pulling you out of your body, coming back in too strong sometimes. You're supposed to be doing the 3 suns exercises. So it's tempting to follow off on these things, but you're really not being a master. You set this time down. I'm going to do the 3 suns meditation just as described, nothing more. So these other things really, I know they're like sparkling candy things, but they're distractions to the real practice. And sometimes these things happen spontaneously, but if you have it a lot, I would suggest, dialing it down a little bit and just staying with the practice. I think that's going to give you the most beneficial effect in the long run. Because it's like, in spirituality, you start to raise your consciousness, you start to have experiences. Wow, I hear I hear other people's thoughts, or I can do this, or I can do that. And the neophytes, I would say, in the beginning, when you first have it, always, wow, that's cool, and you start going off. It's a distraction on the path. We want self-realization. We don't want the phenomena. These are phenomena. We want to know who we are, what we are, and what's our purpose, and then to focus on that. It's nice to have those experiences, but they will lead you away from the main goal of our system.
Beautiful. Yes. I agree, totally agree with what Daniel says. Our main focus is to self-realization. It is self-realization. So whatever we experience, we have to be very sincere observer for everything. So whatever we experience in the meditation, just record, keep it. And after the meditation, why don't you write a journal and observe what you experienced? But we should not follow or be hooked by some experiences and go away from the main pathway. We have to stick to the guidance, basic guidance, and compare your experiences. And the most important thing is, again, to be a good observer for everything. Then whatever experience you're going to have, then we can see everything, which means we will gain the viewpoint of the God in us.
Good. Yeah, it's somewhat like you're driving down a long hot road on a hot summer day and you see like water ahead of you. It's a mirage. It's higher energy hitting a lower plane, making a phenomenon. It's not exactly the same with this one, but it is a phenomena. So we don't want to get caught in the phenomena. We want the reality behind the phenomena, because you can't have any phenomena unless there's a true reality behind it. So that's what we're seeking. Now, I guess that's all the questions. Does anybody else have a question before we go? You can type it in the chat window if you do.
Can you read it?
I can read it.
Okay. Any question?
I don't see any, so okay. All right. Yeah, we do hope to have in-person seminar again this year, and we're planning some online seminars too coming up. So here we go. See you next time, everybody.
Thank you very much for joining us. Have a beautiful day.